And
Sure.
my understanding is Frank Dux did the choreography for that film. And without that gracefulness and power and all those different elements, the film wouldn't be what it is.
Hey guys, in today's video we're going to talk about Frank Dux, going to appreciate his contribution to the world of martial arts. So this is a conversation I've had months ago with Australian film critic slash filmmaker Port Film Co-op. Make sure to check out his YouTube channel, I'll link in the description below. But anyway, it just seemed like a good time to finally put this out. Now, if you watched my last video, I'd mentioned I'm sitting on hundreds of videos to edit, which there's a lot of work to do, but this one just seemed timely, so I'd rather just get this one out sooner rather than later. And the video, by the way, that I'm referencing was my response to Frank Dux essentially saying I lack ethics. Now, the video that the guys put up, it's kind of funny, because if you look at the thumbs up and thumbs down, it's almost 50-50, so a lot of people didn't like that video. I actually gave it a thumbs up, though, because I kind of thought it was entertaining, even though he didn't necessarily say the best thing about me. But the guy who runs that channel turned the comments off, so I can only imagine what people were starting to say. Anyway, the video that I made, quite a bit different. 699 thumbs up, only 8 thumbs down. It's getting a pretty good amount of views, good amount of comments. Long story short, I want to get Frank Dux on the channel. I want to discuss several things with him. With that said, please submit any questions below you want me to ask. Now, I've had a lot of people say, oh, don't even waste your time with him, etc. But then other people thought it would be entertaining. But at the end of the day, I think it's only fair basically to put the ball in his court. Like, if he wants to come on, he's welcome. I actually have a friend trying to set that up, talking to him. And we're going to see what we can do, try to get that thing all set up. But anyway, this video is a nice counterbalance. Like I mentioned in my previous one, sometimes Frank Dux comes up in discussion. So Port Film Co-op and I were basically doing a series of videos, Make Steven Seagal Great Again, which make sure to check those out. I'll link them in the description below because they're not as popular as I was hoping they would be. So if you haven't seen them, please check them out. Anyway, we talk about other things like Rocky IV, which I'm going to put a video out on that as well because that was a really cool discussion. But we talked about Bloodsport, and Frank Dux came up, and this is a conversation that we had about that. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I'm pretty sure even Frank Dux will appreciate it. So anyway, please help support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, liking the video, and make sure to pick up your black belt cologne, black belt fragrances, or women's perfume. I could get you a good discount, $35 plus shipping and handling. All information link in the description below. U.S. customers only, though. It doesn't really make sense to ship this overseas as of now. So anyway, let's get to that discussion about Frank Dux.
But the fact is, even someone like Van Damme, I mean, you would know the story of Bloodsport. In fact, I think that I've seen a video of yours talking about this. It was his vision in the edit suite that made Bloodsport into a watchable and, in fact, great film. Up until that point, it was a little bit visually incoherent. It wasn't working. They didn't know how to cut him. They didn't know how to edit his fight scenes because he actually was doing everything for real, but they were cutting it like there was a stunt double, and it was just a mess.
Bloodsport caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, it just had everything going. I had an amazing story by Frank Dux. It had, amazing musical score. Obviously, Van Damme in his prime. But like you said, one thing that stuck out is like seeing a guy really do all this stuff, and it inspired so many people like myself because the camera's pulled back. He's jumping in the air doing the splits. It's like that's just the thing of beauty. And another point I made about Bloodsport. Like, if you just go by the name, you're thinking, okay, this is just, like, gonna be ugly and brutal and, visceral. And, I mean, you get that to some degree, but what I really like about Bloodsport is just the beauty of martial arts. And Van Damme just being as graceful as he is, you get a movie called Bloodsport, but it's just, I appreciate, like, the beauty of the art, not, like, the violence of it.
Yeah, the aesthetic of it, like the wonderful score by Paul Herzog, I believe.
Yeah,
it's everything about it. Like, I love this early sequence in that film. Just to go over another montage, when it basically explains the relationship with his master, which he's then going to honor in this tournament, and montage is a wonderful way of compressing time, but also pushing emotion. and in between all these memories of training with this master, he is it cuts back to Van Damme's face, and it's just this most powerful shot of his face, so much melancholy and sadness, but a sense that he needs to go and honor his master in this tournament.
He says Senzo Tanaka is his Shidoshi.
What's the difference if Bruce Springsteen is a Shidoshi?
It's a very morally sound film. I love it. It's a film I always tell people to watch when they don't know where to start. I think that's such a great place to start.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, he hit it out the park, basically, not necessarily from day one because he was in No Retreat, No Surrender, but basically as his main leading role, it was just like, wow, he really hit it out the park. You know, Bloodsport actually really reminds me a lot about Rocky IV too, about the montage and honoring the master. And, you know, obviously in Bloodsport, he travels to the Kumite. Stallone, Rocky has to travel to Russia. So there's actually some similarities there between those two films.
Yeah, two classics for sure. But I think that these martial art films and that mystique that you described as contributed far more to the culture.
Definitely contributed a lot more. You know, the interesting thing is, I guarantee you, there are way more people who were inspired by and got into martial arts because of movies like Bloodsport and Kickboxer than there are because they watched, you know, UFC or MMA. And the interesting thing is, you know, mixed martial arts, I mean, they have a lot of gyms just strictly mixed martial arts, right? And a lot of people I talk to now, because I'll ask them, like, if you had to do it all over again, like, where would you start? You know, I had the martial arts journey guy, Rokus, on my channel recently. I mean, he's one guy I asked a lot of people this question. And a lot of people are just, you know, mixed martial arts, where I'm like, well, you know, it wasn't really around when you started. But the thing is, I would probably say that too, had it been around, because most people were bullied or picked on and they just want the actual skills, right? And it's pretty balanced. But it does filter out a lot of the other things you get from martial arts and even martial arts movies. So as much as I'm not like the biggest fan of traditional martial arts, I do like traditional martial arts schools because they give you a lot of different values and they teach you a lot of different important, you know, life lessons and stuff. I'm not saying you can't get that in a mixed martial arts gym, but it's really just down to the fighting in the nitty gritty immediately. And Krav Maga is like that to some degree too, because they'll always say we're a lot more martial than art, you know. But I do like these traditional martial arts schools and dojos because they do kind of build the entire person, not so much just the physical in ways of defending yourself. They just add a lot more. So, you know, if I ever have a kid or anything, I'm going to get him into martial arts, but I don't think I'm going to take him to a mixed martial arts gym from day one. I would go more the traditional route, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, because even in my martial arts training with different styles, I filter out a lot of stuff that I'll never use and don't spend my time doing it because I see no point in it. So even though my philosophy is training martial arts would be more like as a mixed martial artist, but I only do that now because I grew up with more of the traditional stuff and already have all those values and, you know, the wisdom and everything else that like you get from doing that.
Yeah. The modern martial arts is missing the philosophy of the ancient martial arts. That's the problem. And you could say that that's something of the modern age you could apply to anything because we are severing ourselves from wisdom. We're rejecting wisdom. And I think we've been doing that ever since the 1960s. It's accelerated to this point now. We're severing ourselves from the past, and hopefully we'll reconnect because something is lost. Yes,
Here's
a person.
Let me just chime in because this is very interesting because you're bringing up wisdom, losing it. You brought up Frank Dux. I'm not going to name the guy's name because it's a private conversation, but I do want to tell you one thing that he told me, and he knows Frank Dux and has trained with Frank Dux. He doesn't necessarily like to get into the whole Kumite or the secret agent stuff, whether that's true or not, or whether there's like you know, some truth to it or not. He's more focused on and impressed by Frank Dux, the martial artist, which some people just discount everything about Frank Dux, but even director Sheldon Lettich, who wrote Bloodsport, will say, you know, Frank Dux has skills. Like, he was running these dojos in, you know, in Southern California prior to Bloodsport. Like, he is a martial artist. He has skills. He knows things. But I think because people, you know, again, whether those allegations, and that's a controversial topic because Frank Dux still sticks with that story. And there's even a website dedicated to it because there's evidence saying, oh, this is why Frank Dux is a fraud. And then he basically refutes all that with, I don't know, I'm going to do a deep dive into that in the future. But all that aside, at the end of the day, regardless of that, like, he is a legit martial artist as far as I know, and he does have skills. Now, whether he beat 300 people in the Kumite, that's a whole other topic that I don't even want to get into, but I may someday on the channel.
One other thing I would say about Frank Dux is you were talking about how beautiful Bloodsport is and how aesthetically beautiful. And a lot of that is going to be how the film is shot, but it's also the choreography. And
Sure.
My understanding is Frank Dux did the choreography for that film. And without that gracefulness and power and all those different elements, the film wouldn't be what it is. Martial arts itself wouldn't be what it is because it's films like that that make people join the martial arts. So like the contribution that artists make through making film, particularly in the era of the 70s with the Hong Kong martial arts films, then in the 80s and the 90s with the American ones, the contributions that those films have made to the martial arts is huge.
Yeah, and I made that exact point in a video, and I basically said, okay, let's say hypothetically, since everyone believes this narrative, and I didn't do a deep dive, but let's say hypothetically, this whole Kumite thing, this whole Bloodsport story is just purely his imagination. Okay, let's just go with that narrative that everybody seems to believe, which may or may not be true, but let's just go with that. At the very least, we do have to give Frank Dux credit because look what Bloodsport spawned. Not only has it inspired so many people to join the martial arts, but you're talking about spawning one of the greatest video games of all time in Mortal Kombat. Kind of almost planted a seed for the idea of mixed martial arts competition, in my opinion. So just the contribution that it made is pretty damn significant. So at the very least, we got to give Frank Dux some sort of credit.
Absolutely, and because there's so much negativity, like we actually, he has obviously done some great things within cinema that we are now disregarding because he may have told some tall stories. I don't really care if, look, all the great artists are flawed, all of them. All of them have lied, all of them have hurt their families, or all of them have done bad things. Like, it's universal. You go through music, cinema, painting.
It's just humans, man.
All of them have flawed people in one way or another, and they're human. But to disregard their accomplishments for that and to airbrush that from history is just dishonest.
No, 100%. And I bring that point up all the time, especially in my comments section with Seagal. I'm like, look, man, I'm talking about like these films. I'm talking about him as a martial artist. If you want to focus on like all this negative stuff associated with them, that's not the point of the video I made. And we don't even know if all this negative stuff's associated with him is just part of this narrative of character assassination or not. Maybe there's some truth to it, or maybe there's not. But like you mentioned, let's at least appreciate what this guy has done, because like you said, we're all flawed in some way, right?